You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGackie, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
What is up, good people? I hope y'all had a Merry Christmas. I'm posting this a day late because it was Christmas yesterday, and let's be honest, you probably had better things to do than listen to me yammer on and on. But thankfully, you're here, and I do appreciate you. I do have a really awesome update. Something really cool happened, really amazing. Cool does not begin to describe it, actually. If you go back a few episodes, you heard me do a whole long intro about Tim Christ, who is Doug Christ's son, Doug Christ of 37 Effects, member of the guitar podcast community. You heard me do an intro about a GoFundMe that was going on for Tim Christ, and there's a giveaway associated with that. I don't want to rehash all the details here, so go back to the episode with Barry from Grez Guitars. It's right in the intro of that episode if you want all the details. But the great, fantastic, awesome update is that they found a heart for Tim, and Tim has received the transplant and is on the mend. It's really, really incredible. That went from very, very scary. I mean, he's still got a long recovery road ahead, so definitely not completely out of the woods yet, and they definitely could still use some assistance over there. So please go check out that intro to the Barry from Grez Guitars intro for more information. I pack everything in over there that I have. Please check that out. But for those that have already heard it, I thought you'd like to hear that update. It's pretty incredible. It sounds like the surgery went well and things are on their way. But they could definitely still use some assistance, so the GoFundMe link will still be in the description of this podcast. And make sure you go back and listen to the intro to the episode with Barry from Grez Guitars if you have not listened to that episode already. Actually, listen to the whole episode, but the information relevant to what we're talking about here is in the intro to that podcast. All right, without further ado, let's get into this episode with Randall Taylor. Randall performs under the moniker Amulets. He makes incredibly cool music. He uses tape loops and guitars and lots of effects and makes this incredible soundscapey. I love it. It's kind of like in the vein of what I've done with American Cyclops, but in my opinion, much cooler. So let's get into this episode. We talk a little bit about guitars. We talk a lot about just general creativity, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoy his music. I really enjoy his aesthetics. Go give him a follow. Seriously, that's also in the show notes. And enjoy this episode. We had a really great talk. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today I have Randall Taylor, better known as Amulets. What's going on, dude? Oh no, I caught him at the worst time. He's going down.
I was like clearing my throat, trying to drink water, and I think I made it worse. I thought your intro was gonna be longer. My bad.
Oh no, I do that very short version so that I can pile on a long one on top of it later.
No, this is a terrible start. I'm sorry.
No, it's beautiful. It's real. It's real.
Very real.
It's very real.
I was like, I'm just drinking water, listening to this intro. Okay, yes, hi.
Hello. I'm here today. This is going to be a good episode, I can tell.
Yeah.
Because we just talked for like 15 minutes and I'm like, wow, we really should have recorded
Yeah,
pretty
probably
much all
should have
of
hit
it.
record earlier, huh?
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's all right. That's for us.
Yeah.
Not everybody gets everything.
No, that's true. You ever just play guitar and you're like, I should have recorded that. That was a good idea. And then when you hit record and that idea is like, it's not the same, or I didn't remember it.
Or
quite
it's
well.
like not, that's actually, no, that's not as good as I thought
Yeah,
it was.
totally. Yeah. So not everything needs to be recorded.
Well, dude, it's very cool to have you here in the Shred Shed today. We're hanging out. We're just nerding out and talking about getting a better feel for what each other does on a day-to-day basis. And as much as they're different, they have a lot of similarities. But
Totally.
I wanted to get you on to get your story because I've seen what you do with, and for the listeners, if you're not familiar, he does a lot of like tape looping, lots of effects pedal use, also playing guitar. It's basically, if you guys have heard my music, it's kind of like what I do, but way cooler. So that's pretty much how I would describe it. So tell me more about how you found yourself in this space. When did you pick up guitar? How'd you find tape loops and all?
Yeah.
Let's go way back.
Like way back. Okay. I mean, I picked up guitar in like 8th grade, and I fell in love. I was obsessed. I like learned a lot of like Green Day songs. And and I was like, wow, I'm obsessed with guitar. Like I was in a lot of bands in high school, and I just was really drawn to it. And like I feel like it was like the most expressive thing that I had encountered in my life. And like music was such a huge part of my life. And before that, I was playing like clarinet, and like it wasn't like, it wasn't vibing. Like it wasn't like the thing that felt good. And I think for a long time, like my parents wanted me to play music. They wanted me to play something. And I was like, can I play guitar? And they're like, sure. Yeah. And, but yeah, I just fell in love with guitar. And from then I was in a lot of bands, and like after college, I was in a lot of bands, and like I always had like side projects and like my own stuff that I was doing. And, I found myself in, I think one of the more formative bands was like after college, I was in this post-rock band, and we were doing a lot of instrumental music. And, that was really, I fell in love with that genre and that kind of style of music. And I think like I wasn't always into like ambient music, but I think the post-rock world pushed me into like liking more ambient stuff and like what it could be. And I think when I started this project specifically, Amulets started as like a witch house project. I was really into the band Salem.
Okay.
And I was trying to make like spooky like beats and stuff. And I ended up pivoting this project. And the decisive moment that changed that for me was watching the rig rundown video of Alessandro Cortini of 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah.
And this video is probably, I don't know, 10, 12 years old now. I was watching on YouTube, and he's using a 4-track tape recorder, and he's showing how he's changing chords on it. And so he's using the 4-track like an instrument. And I immediately was like, wow, that's like so cool. And I had known about like tape loops and cassette usage for these kinds of experiments and stuff, but I never really tried it. And so when he's recording all those chords, he's using like a 30-minute tape or something. So he's like putting each chord on the 4-track and recording it for 30 minutes each. And I just found myself so impatient with that process. Or I thought it was really cool, but I'm like, I don't have time to record a 30-minute drone on one side of a tape. So I started exploring tape loops. And, at the time, there was like a few websites here and there, a couple of videos. And I kind of pieced it all together to figure out how to do it. And I was like, if I can take this same concept that he's using and use it with tape loops, I could record that same drone chord in 5 seconds. So the actual process of creating the tape loop was very tedious and took me a lot of trial and error. But once I started doing that, I started experimenting with what tape loops and like this kind of like setup could be. And I was really drawn to it, especially at the time I was really in like the DAW and like really into the computer recording. And like, I just found myself, because I just didn't want to look at the screen anymore. And I found that like, okay, when I'm using this 4-track and then running through pedals and stuff, like I'm getting wild sounds. I'm not looking at a screen, and I'm like making music more. And then I, started incorporating guitar with that. And I think that was a big moment where everything shifted, because I played a show with just these tapes, like in tape loops and stuff. And I felt like naked because I was just playing these tapes, and I'm like, I don't really understand how to perform like this.
Right.
And then once I decided to incorporate guitar, which I knew how to play and like felt comfortable and felt more natural performing with, once I started doing that and guitar, everything made more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to like loop the guitar, then go back to the tapes and loop those, and then go back to guitar and like really build a lot of like sonic layers and stuff.
Yeah. So when you're doing the looping, like I see, on Instagram all the time, you've got it. It's not just a tape that's just playing necessarily. Sometimes it is, but you literally are looping it physically around different objects and different things. Is that primarily for like aesthetic purposes, or is there some like degradation that happens when it's running across different things, or what's the reasoning for that?
I mean, it's a little bit of both. I think there's like aesthetically, it's like fun to like just. Oops, sorry, I just hit the mic.
I do it all the time.
I'm talking with my hands too much. I like to extend the loop out. It does look nice, and it's fun to like loop it around stuff. But mostly it originally started as just a way to get a longer loop.
Okay.
So once you break, like inside the cassette tape, there's, only so much space for the loop. So, you max out at a certain length and time. But once you break it out of the cassette, I found like, I can get like 20, 30 seconds now, with a longer piece of tape.
Right. I got you. That makes way more sense actually than what I was thinking.
Yeah, but it also looked cool because then I started experimenting with like, well, how long could I do it? Like, where could I loop it around? And then you run into tension issues where it's like looping around certain things and it will stop or break and stuff. So.
Get tangled, whatever.
Yeah, I found that the foot switch of a guitar pedal has a nice little notch in it, and that actually became like a nice. Like guide for
and it's smooth
and so it became like a go-to thing for sure.
Nice So when you first started doing it, did it immediately take for you? Were you like, this is the thing that I really enjoy, or was it like just a lot of frustration? Or
it was both. I think it was like frustration of like using tapes as like, you could do all the stuff that I'm doing, and you're like, you could do it on a computer. You could do it on a SP404. You could do it on a lot of different equipment. And doing it using a cassette tape is far more tedious and like kind of insane in a lot of ways. It's like the hardest way to get to one point, but at the same time, it provides a lot of things that are different, that are very unique. Like the sound of the tape, the hiss, the physical nature of making something like that and then using it is really fun. And it's not the most direct path, but it is something that like I found myself drawn to, and like building a setup and building these tapes. And like, I've always liked that aspect of what I've been doing, and like building setups and like routing and like trying to get these wild sounds. And it feels like this kind of like sonic engineering, like Lego-y world where I'm like, what else could I do? What else could I plug in? How else could I make this weirder? And I was definitely inspired too by like the kind of like modular synth world, where I'm like, this is cool that you can like open a suitcase and it's all your wires are plugged in. It's like already generating sounds. And it's kind of like that turnkey system where you could just like, you're ready to go. And so I tried to build a tape looping system in the same way. And so some of my first, and still the setup I use today, like I nicknamed like the suitcase of drone.
Yep.
And like, I just would open it up and it'd be like my 4-track, a bunch of effect pedals, like all routed, all these wires and mixers. And like, and so I tried to make that same kind of like idea with the tapes. And so I think like I was just drawn to the whole world of it, like being able to like build my own instrument of sorts.
There's so much to be said for the physicality in playing that I think probably doesn't make a lot of sense until you've done it. I personally, like, I use pedals kind of like a synth player too. And so when I have everything out, and this was not something that I just like thought of. I'd seen other people do it and I still didn't really understand it, but the listeners have heard this story a million times. But it comes from, I had, from working in this industry, I had all this opportunity to have all this stuff I could only dream of as a kid. Like I could only fantasize in my wildest dreams. Like at 14, I this is exactly how I thought about it. I was like, I'm just making demos. They're not super exciting to me. Yeah, I like doing them. It's not like I hate it. It's just like, I got to show what this pedal does. I don't show what I can do with it necessarily. I have to show what it does.
Yeah.
So people understand it. And there's definitely, I think that's a needed thing in today's market with so many things. And there's lots of people doing that. But I thought that's where I needed to be. And I just thought, I was like, man, 14-year-old me would be so mad, though, that I have all this cool stuff and I'm not doing anything with it.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything of my own with it. I'm just showing people what it can do.
Yeah.
And so I finally just was like, screw whatever I'm quote unquote supposed to be doing right now. I'm going to open up my drawers here. I'm going to go through the shelves and just find whatever happens to grab me right now. I'm going to grab it.
Yes.
Plug it in. And the next thing I knew, I had just this absurd array of like things going out to a stereo rig that just didn't make any sense at all.
Sure.
And I was like, well, here we go.
Yeah.
I set the mics up and just started recording things in the middle of the night.
Because that's fun. That's interesting. That's fascinating to do, like to play with these toys and like to see what happens. You know, I think that level of experimentation is always just like, really fascinating. I remember when I first started to, I really loved like Knobs, like his videos.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I remember, I've always loved pedals, but like the pedal video demo world was much different. It was like guys playing like, based like blues riffs and stuff. And I'm like, I don't really want to play that necessarily. And I want to see how this pedal would sound through like a tape or a synth or something different. And I think when I first started like watching Knobs videos, like I was floored. Like this is a different demo. This is a different way to show how to use pedals like this. And I was really inspired by him. And, once I never really consider myself like someone who really demos pedals. Like I know I use pedals, but I just kind of show people that I'm using them or show what it can be used for. Like I know what I do and like I'm just running through random shit through pedals and like, but like that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do, and that's what I wanted to see, too. But now, you have like Emily the harpist and, other people doing like lots of wilder things with pedals, and it's cool to see like the landscape changing.
Yeah, I think they've definitely, and I think there's still a lot of room for more, but it's definitely expanded out. And because I remember thinking that, when I first was exposed to pedals. And I don't mean like I didn't know they existed. I knew what wah pedals were and I'd like seen them. But like when I really got into the world of effects, my first thought was like, well, what does a voice sound like through that? Like, what does this sound like through it?
Sure.
And then having like, it was a pretty fast, I don't want to say shift, but it wasn't too long before I was trying that stuff. I was like, well, and it wasn't like I was groundbreaking. I'd seen somebody else do it somewhere. Yeah. But we were in the studio recording my band's record, and we're like, well, why don't we run some vocals through these pedals? Like we're reamping stuff. Why don't we try reamping bass through this instead, or reamping whatever? And really realizing like these things can be used for more than just guitar.
Yeah. I mean, guitar pedal is like, even just saying guitar pedal is like a very limiting phrase, right? It's like a pedal. It is a pedal it's an effect pedal. It does a lot of different things, but not exclusively for guitar. And I think that like mindset is where you're like, why don't we try this? Why don't we run this through this? Like, why don't we see what happens when we do this? I think that that level of exploration is like, I feel like people have been doing it for so long, but now the tools in these pedals are even wilder now. So it's like trying to run something through, like a Chase Bliss pedal, you're like, dude, this is wild.
Yeah.
Like, it's definitely not just for guitar.
No. It makes you wonder, like, what would 9 Inch Nails have sounded like with a Mercury X or like something else? Like, like, wow, what would they have done? But those type of sounds, 9 Inch Nails is a great example, but there's others. Like, those type of sounds, I think, are what have led to the current state.
Yeah. Because I'm sure Trent Reznor now is, like, using weird pedals and now he's just making soundtrack work.
Probably,
now, like I'm sure like he's like, oh, these make weirder sounds now. Like, oh, I can make a soundtrack with it now.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Have you ever done any like soundtrack movie type stuff?
Yeah. I've been really kind of moving toward that. I know my music lends itself a lot to like the soundtrack world and stuff, and been getting more and more work in that world. And
That's
like,
so cool.
It's really cool, and it's a place I wanted to be for a long time. But I think showing people that I can do it and like having those skills and being able to like, because like writing for a film is so different than writing for yourself, and like trying to match the mood and make everything fit, while also trying to retain what you do, sonically. And so, excuse me. Yeah, it's been really cool to be able to, create those soundtracks and those worlds and have people ask me to do that for them, because
That's so cool.
It's something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm getting more and more into it. So hopefully it just keeps growing.
It's a dream of mine to do something like that. Like, I really want to work on that kind of thing. And my music is, like I said, it's kind of in the same ballpark as what you do. Like, but I never have been able to figure out exactly where it came from, because I listen to like punk and metal and country and like things that don't have really anything to do with the songs that I'm making.
Sure.
Most of the time. Like what I put out on Instagram for like Tone Mob stuff is quite different than what I do for, I call the project American Cyclops, but it's quite different. And so, but like I put it out as a podcast first. The listeners know all this. I'm sorry, guys, but Randall doesn't. So, and so, but the immediate reaction I got, because I had like this text group that goes along with the show where people can just text me. And the first responses were all like, "This sounds like a horror movie." And I was like, "Well, I do love horror movies, so that's probably something to do with it."
I mean, it's funny how all those things, like all our influences and all the things we like and listen to, get filtered and like combined into something where the output can be very different from our input. But like, I think that's like the beautiful part of like our creative minds and like the blender that is everything that you just like churn up, and then you're like, well, this is what I made. And you're like, where'd that come from? Like, I don't know.
I don't know
the depths of my psyche. I don't know.
It was the first time ever when I was working on that. It was, and I'm kind of starting to get back into it. It's been a little while since I've been able to focus on it, but that like standing out there on that little porch at like 2 a.m. and just being like, what was that?
Yeah.
Like what? Like I really felt like I wasn't there. Like somebody else was piloting the ship for a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's like first time ever that I really felt like that.
Yeah.
Everything else was always very intentional. Like, does this chord go here?
Totally.
Does that, well, like, does this, and like thinking of it in like a rock band or a punk band context, it was always trying to collectively come up with something together rather than just like opening up, like take the wheel, here we go.
I mean, it's a fascinating state. I mean, definitely have been there too. And it's kind of like almost spiritual, where it's like, you become a vessel for the thing that you're making, but it's also like it's like going through you. It's not like, like you said, it's not, there's certain intentional decisions you're making, and then there's certain flow states where you get into and you're just going, and you're like, I don't even know if I'm making all these, like things are just coming out and like going through, and I'm recording them and making them, and like, how did I even come up with that? And you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Like, I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's not required. It's not like you have to be in that to make cool things. And people definitely do with more traditional mindsets, I guess. But there's something to that flow state that I guess I was going to say I wish we could get into it all the time. But then if you got into it all the time, it wouldn't be as cool.
No. It wouldn't be as special.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a thing to like strive for and to want, but it's also something you can't force. You know, it's just like it can happen, but it is special. If it happened all the time, it would be like you're like, oh well, let me just turn on my flow state switch and like it doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
I guess that's like the best things in life too, right? You can't always recreate the things that are most special, and if you could, they wouldn't be special anymore.
Totally, and like all these circumstances have to line up for something to be that way too. I do feel like a studio space, having all your things out and like all the toys that you want to use when you're creating, like it's like having all the colors of the palette, you're like out, and like all your supplies are there. And so like it makes it helps you get into the state a little easier if you can not get hung up on like, oh, I got to plug this in and I got to switch this out and I got to like, because if the more barriers you have between what's in your brain and like getting it out on, out of you, I find the more it like takes away from that moment. So like I like my studio, like everything's like just a mess and everything's set up though. And like, I can just like turn this on, like hit record and I'm going. And I think that really helps me with the immediacy of like an idea and then getting it out.
Yeah. And I think we have a lot of luxuries as modern players and musicians where we can like capture a lot of ideas, say we're out and about and it's like,
yeah,
we can get our phone out and we can hum it or we can type it in or we can do whatever and I've definitely recovered a lot of ideas that ended up turning into something that way. Most of them don't, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Like who cares? But it's amazing to think about that. Almost every musician does that now. They're like, oh yeah, almost forgot it. So I hummed it in my phone or I played it on the keyboard on my phone or whatever. And it's amazing to really think about, man, that's people in the 70s weren't able to do that.
Yeah, right.
It's so common for us now.
Yeah, you can, literally record everything on your phone and like, yeah, it is wild to be able to just have that, that tool that's always with you. Like I use a lot of field recordings in my music and stuff. And people ask me like, well, what's the best field recorder? And like, what should I buy? And what do you use? And, I have like some handheld recorders and stuff, but I just use my phone half the time.
Yeah.
Half most of the time. And I just have all these voice memos of just sounds throughout the day, throughout the world. Just, when you hear it, you just record it. And it's just so immediate that, I'm sacrificing quality for the convenience, but at the same time, like it's happening now. Like I have my phone with me. I'm able to record it.
The thing is, even if you had your recorder in your car, so to speak, are you going to have it with you in the moment that you need it?
Absolutely.
Well, I recorded, it's funny that you saying that like just brought back all these memories, but like there's a clip of a guy getting arrested on my record that I wouldn't have been able to get. And it became the name of the record. The cop says, Tom, do you have anything sharp on you? That's the name of the record.
Wow. So like it really was like a kernel of inspiration for so much more than.
Yeah. And like I just happened to be there at the moment. And there's no way you can identify anybody. Like it's which is I would never do that to someone, right? But it was just like I don't know what caused me to even think about it. I was like, I should record the sound of this guy getting arrested. And like it was I don't know why I did that, but like you can hear it and then it became a part of the whole story. But it was a real thing that happened and that was just my phone. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And had the idea that I didn't even have the idea it was going to be part of the record. I thought, I wonder what this is going to sound like when I record it.
Yeah.
And it's mostly indiscernible except for that line.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. The phone is a really incredible, as for all of its evils, and there are a lot of them, it's actually a really incredible tool if you use it the right way.
Yeah.
And the right way can be anything, but like you're intentional about your use. Your phone can change your life.
Oh, absolutely.
It's pretty wild. It's an interesting time that we live in.
Yeah, totally. To be a musician and to have all these tools, it's like, even like, not to bring it back to pedals, but even like the pedals that like are, I forget that one. I was interested in it and it like basically wirelessly connects to your phone, but it's a pedal and then you can like go through different modeling.
Oh, wow.
Of like, it just was a weird one where I'm like, oh, I can literally just almost like a plug-in on your phone and then it transmits it to the pedal.
Right. And then you can control it on the pedal.
Right.
Yeah.
Where it's like, wow, we've really bridged that gap of like plug-in to physical hardware. And like, I mean, we're constantly doing that. Like, I mean, I just saw Lossy on your desk and like, oh, that's literally plug-in to physical hardware. Hybrid.
It's crazy that I think we've seen lots of examples of the inverse of that, where hardware gets turned into a plugin, which makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah.
But I wondered, and Lossy was not the first one it's not the first plugin I thought of. I'd heard of it before, but it was not the first one I thought of for doing that. And I've been wondering, there's some very like classic quote unquote plugins at this point that I'm like, I wonder if those are ever going to make it out into the pedal world. And I bet you we see more and more of that, which is kind of fun because some of those plugin companies have some really unique ideas that have not been explored in the hardware world that should be.
Well, it's interesting where the technology is all caught up where you can do that. You can take the plugin and put it into a pedal.
Right.
Where you're like, whoa, you couldn't even think of doing that.
There wasn't enough processing power.
You're like, that wasn't even possible for a long time. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what else happens.
I like that too, and I'm sure you can relate because I like turning knobs physically.
Oh, I love turning knobs.
I love plugins too. I use them all the time. But I like to be out there, like, get the sliders and knobs, and it's more interactive, more inspiring. I way prefer it.
Yeah, I mean, people come to my live shows and they're like, I don't know what you're doing, but I see you turning a lot of knobs. I'm like, it is a lot. But yeah, it's great. I feel like that's my profession. Like
knob turning.
Professional knob turning.
Hi, I'm Vincent, and I'm here to talk about the Mercury X. My dad's always going on and on about how cool Maris is. He really went off on one about the Mercury X the other day. He said something about a 4,800 hertz sample rate and 99 preset locations and 33 banks, and something along the lines of the most advanced reverb pedal ever devised by man? That's all true, but I only care about one thing. This pedal sounds sick. So make sure you check out the Mercury X and all the other fine products at maris.us, as well as fine retailers worldwide. All right, Dad, now can I have my Pocky?
How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services. And it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there. So when you are performing, it's super easy to imagine how this works in a studio space, what you do, right? Like it was born there, you know? How do you manage that? It's one thing to do like a local show, but you just came off a big tour. How do you manage all of that rather sensitive hardware on the road?
Well, that's been one of the biggest hurdles lately is like, as I scale up, it's like the equipment and like the how to make it safe, basically like how to carry it all and like make sure it stays intact. And I've actually gone through a couple cases and couple of iterations of the Suitcase of Drone, and like the vintage suitcase I had was really good for a long time, but like over time, like the road has really like, you know, messed it up. And so I got a custom case from Toman, whatever. Yeah, I got a custom case from them, and like I put in all my stuff, and I've reorganized everything. So it's in a nice flight case now, and it's like very good to go. But it's still like relying on cassette tapes and tape loops, and like, and you know, knock on wood, I haven't had any terrible incidents with it yet. I mean, like I've had tape loops break and stuff at shows and performances and stuff. But for the most part, like everything's been good and stays intact. And this case is really good at keeping everything secure, so it doesn't, I don't have any casualties.
That's
on the road.
good.
Yeah.
Do you carry like backup tapes and stuff?
No, that's the thing. I probably should, and I don't. And
You're a brave man.
And I know maybe I'm a foolish man, but this last run I did 15 shows as direct support with UMO, and I was like, what if a tape breaks? Like, what if something happens? And I just was like, yeah, what if? I don't know. I'll figure that out. Like I have backup songs that I can do.
Okay.
But like there's no backup tape to the tape that I'm using. It's like there's one tape. So, I think that maybe I'm living a little too dangerously, but I think
Or maybe that's part of the magic.
or maybe that is part of the magic.
Yeah.
Like part of basing your whole performance on cassette tapes is wild and gambling. And so maybe I'm, just keep I just keep gambling with it and seeing. But so far it's worked out.
As long as you got backup songs, I think you'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, yeah, maybe, okay, that tape broke or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, as long as you have something else ready to go.
Yeah. I had this one tape of a song that I was performing for. It used to be my closer for many years. And this tape loop, it broke a handful of times, and I fixed it. And toward the end, I could physically hear the tape worn down for what it was. Like, it's just like a little rougher. Like, it just was sounding more bad than normal. And I kind of was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I played this song so many times, and each time it's sounded a little bit different, and each time it's gotten a little worse. And now I think it's finally retired itself out of my set list. And so I stopped playing that song and retired the tape, and it just was cool that the tape itself was like, I'm tired.
Right, I'm done.
I'm tired. Can you stop? Can you play a new song?
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah.
Like that. Oh, that is kind of cool. It's it's because it's a way that by viewing it through that lens, you physically are forced to not get stagnant.
Yeah,
like
totally.
We're like, nope. I guess that one's done.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I joke that being a one-man band and that these are my bandmates, and the tape is. Like the 4-track is a bandmate, and I do have to listen to it. If it's not happy, I'm like, oh, I need to take care of this one, because it's like the heart of everything that I'm doing. So or like the tape's like, I'm tired, please stop.
Please stop.
I'm like, okay.
I have to imagine, and this isn't even really that much of a question that I don't already know the answer to, but I have to imagine you've taken some inspiration from the disintegration loops.
Oh yeah. I mean, William Basinski is it's like king. Yeah.
I had never heard of him until 5-6 years ago when Tom from Tomcat Pedals told me about him on the podcast. I was like, I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah.
And so, it's I mean, but as far as I'm aware, that that was just a one-time thing, because those literally destroyed themselves.
Yeah.
But did he do more in that vein with tape, or was that kind of just his most famous thing?
I think that's his most famous thing. I think he's done more with tape since then, but I think that one's just the standout one for sure.
I mean, it's a great concept.
Oh yeah. I remember I don't know, Heinbach a few years ago was doing destruction loops and trying to recreate a disintegration loops kind of thing, and he was purposely destroying them and stuff. And that was pretty cool. I did my own video and experiment where I put a razor blade and some sandpaper inside a tape loop, and I just let it go for an hour, and it took a long time for it to get destroyed.
But it did
Eventually. But it's just weird experiments.
So switching gears a little bit, we were talking before we started recording about, this is I guess somewhat businessy, but somewhat just lifestyle too. How trying to do anything in a creative space tends to take a lot of different different sources of income, for lack of a better word, but like
Yeah.
also just like it's very rarely just like one big thing, and they're like, I'm covered from my one big thing, the way it
Totally.
is with a
Yeah.
typical 9 to 5 job, right?
Mhm.
So like you've talked about, obviously we have your music, obviously we have your performances. We talked about some soundtrack stuff. Like, what does your day to day look like when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not, forced to drive 40 minutes south
Well-
into some guy's shed?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of the exciting part. Like every day is a little bit different. I mean, how it depends on the week and stuff, but like just coming off like a 3-week tour, like, that was nice. Like made some money, sold a bunch of merch and stuff. And it kind of like buys me some time to be like, okay, well, now what do I need to get back to now? And like sometimes that is like a soundtrack project or like, corresponding with that and trying to set that up. And I've had a couple going, like numerous ones that are like longer ones and shorter ones that are overlapping with each other now. And sometimes it's remix work. Like that's actually been really, really fun where, people hit me up and they're like, do you want to do a remix? I actually saw your Thrice stickers up there and I'm like, did you know I did a remix for Thrice?
I didn't know you did that. No, well, I mean, if you turn around,
I was like, this is a lot of Thrice. I think you're a big fan.
I'm a huge fan,
Yeah.
and I've gotten to know the guys a little bit over the years too, which is weird for 15-year-old me. But
totally.
because I love that.
Well,
band.
I love Thrice too, and I feel like that first album, like Illusion of Safety, it was that second album. I mean, either way, the guitar playing on that, remember being like so young and just floored by the like tapping and like.
And it's weird to like
crazy.
grow up a little bit, but like when I first heard them, I could go on and on. I won't.
Yeah,
I'll try not to.
Sorry,
but like I felt like, oh, these guys are just, they have to be so much older than me.
Yeah.
Just I didn't know.
Sure.
I just am hearing them like, oh, they're so much more proficient. They've got to be so much. And I'm like, oh, they're only like a few years older than me. It just feels weird.
Yeah, it does feel weird, doesn't it? Like when you meet those people and like kind of realize like they're like real human beings that are only a little bit older than you.
Yeah, it's like 3 or 5 years or something. Like it's like, oh.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Oh, and we're just eating pizza.
No, but like, I mean, sometimes it's remix work, sometimes it's soundtrack work. But like waking up, it's just kind of like, okay, like, what do I have to do today? Like, what's immediate and like what's long term, and most of it's like pretty flexible. So, being able to, kind of make my own hours to be my own boss is just incredible. Like I have another band with my friend Eric, who we talked about. And like I go there during the day and we have band practice and like we both, work from home and stuff. So we're able to like practice at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon and like on a weekday. But I think my day to day is just like a mix of like random things like, recording a podcast in a shed.
Right.
And like, making weird little, like whether I'm like making music for someone else or just recording for myself. It's just kind of like sporadic from day to day. And it feels good to be able to like, make those choices throughout the week. Like I keep myself busy for sure, but it's like, okay, today I'm doing this. Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to go practice. Like Thursday evening, I'm going to go see this movie. And I think that's actually been a big one too, is like I really like going to the movies, but like it's been a push to not only go to more, but like watch it with a different lens too, to like listen to the soundtracks, listen to like what people are doing. And as I get more into that world, like, like exploring that and trying to learn more about that. But yeah, also like just touring, working on new music. I don't know, like it's kind of a grab bag.
You never know. Yeah, for me, it's I do a billion things. I feel like my brain's going in a million different directions, but I try to have one main thing per day. Like if it's a podcast that day, it's like that's the main thing for today, and everything else revolves around that.
Right.
And I used to not do that, and especially back when I was getting this show started, I was basically working like 3 full-time jobs at the same time trying to make it work.
Yeah.
And so there was no way that one thing was going to be the main thing. Like I was literally recording podcasts like in a fuel lab like while I was like doing like stuff I was supposed to be doing, I was also recording a podcast.
Yeah.
You can hear that too. I remember
That's
like
really funny.
some of the early Joel episodes, like I'm literally standing there like next to a diesel analyzer.
Yeah. That's wild. It's funny, like we all do. I mean, as you work on any project, any passion project, if you're working, you're squeezing in time to work on that thing. Like I remember having, before this and in a previous life, I was like a front end web developer, and I was like a computer programmer, and like I would like code all day, but also like, like secretly like upload my music and like check my like Bandcamp and like sell things on it and stuff, but like to do a podcast, it's pretty wild.
I've told this again, I keep repeating myself. It's hard not to. I talk for a living. I'm sorry, everybody. Yeah. But my old boss walked in while I was recording a podcast, I believe with Keely. I can't remember for sure. And it just looked like I was on the phone because that was the app I used was, and he was cool. He was one of those guys that just like, hey Jim, if you listen to this, thanks. He, as long as you were getting your work done, it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
But that wasn't an official policy. He couldn't, it was a pretty big company, and like he couldn't outwardly just say that. Like, go screw off somewhere. Right. But as long as you get your work done.
Just checking in on you, like, hey, you recording a podcast
He
again?
came in for something completely different, like to ask me a question or something. And then I was just like, and he was like, just kind of looked at me, like, what are you doing? And then walked out. And I was like, well, hopefully that doesn't get me fired. But anyway, still recording this podcast.
Oh, at least you like didn't get like caught with your like pants down at work or something. like, oh, that's embarrassing.
Oh, hey,
it's like, what are you doing in here? You're like, it's podcasting.
Podcasting. You're doing what?
Yeah, right.
That sounds like something we should report to HR.
Yeah, what did you call me?
But yeah, it was not a time that I like. I'm not nostalgic for it in the way that like, man, I wish I could go back to that because it was hard.
Yeah.
It was like to be so focused into so many different directions, but really only wanting to do one thing.
Yeah, I feel that.
It was not fun. It was really exhausting. In fact, I quit probably a little bit before I should have, like realistically.
Yeah.
But I literally like I can't do all this anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's that like burning the candle at both ends. Like, literally just like, running yourself.
For like 3 years. And it was like, I sometimes look back and I talk to Scott about this, like listeners know who Scott is, but I was like, because he was doing the same thing, but with his company in Nashville. And I was like, how did we do that?
Yeah.
We weren't that much, we're not that much older than we were then, but I'm like, I don't even know if I have the mental capacity to do that now.
Yeah. I mean, like all those things, like any, creative endeavor, passion project thing you want to do and make it a bigger thing. Like, you can do, there's like a divide, right? It comes to a point where you're like, I'm spending 8 hours a day working, then 8 hours a day doing this other thing. And you're like, I can't do them both. Like I'm doing too much. And I definitely came to that point where I'm trying to make music work so hard and I'm still working a full-time job. And at some point you have to make the leap of faith, which is so scary. Like taking chances. Now those leaps of faith, those like unknown, like, that's hard for everyone.
Yeah.
No one wants to do that. Like no one wants to feel unsafe, and they're kind of just worried and anxious about like, is this going to work? And, you never know until you try. But at the same time, like luck, like for me, like it came where I knew I needed to make that call. And like, are you going to try to do music full time? Are you going to try to spend all that time you would be working at a full-time job, like 40 hours a week? What if you spent that on music? What would that look like? And I remember I was coming closer to the decision of trying to like, do I quit my job? And I actually got laid off.
Oh.
And they like gave me a little bit of a like severance, and they were like, sorry. And I was like, it's okay. And I remember going home that day and being like, wow, that's it. That was a sign.
Yeah.
Like I can pay my bills for a couple months, and I'm going to try to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can't, then I'm going to just go get another job. But if I can, then this is the gateway. This is the door.
Right.
And yeah, and that was, I don't know, 4 years ago now. So
Dude,
yeah,
that's killer.
yeah.
I mean, somewhat similar. I didn't get laid off, but what happened was the facility got bought by a smaller company that didn't have there were some things working for that larger company that was like, these don't exist anymore, like pensions and things like these.
Yeah.
This doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So I would feel dumb to get rid of this because it literally is almost impossible to find.
Yeah.
And so that was a big part of what was keeping me there. I was like, I'm making enough money, I could probably pay my bills, or at least mostly pay my bills with maybe a little extra side work here and there that I could quit. But I'm like, man, I can't get rid of that.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it's a blessing and a curse, I guess. They sold the facility. New company that took it over was great. By all like, honestly, a very cool company, but they didn't have that.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that was the one thing keeping me here.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
And they were everybody was so cool. Honest, like, I have no bad things to say about them. The only bad things I have to say about that job is it just required way more of me than I had to give.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of that business. So
Yeah.
the gas has got to keep flowing, or the
Totally.
or it's bad for the local economy.
It's kind of funny. Like it seems like it always comes down to like a one thing, or like you're so close to like jumping, and you're like, I can't yet. There's like still an attachment.
Yep.
And like even that thin, like the attachment can be so thin, and like once it goes, and you're like, I'm free.
Yeah.
I'm free of it now. Like I could do it. I could try. I could see how it goes. You know.
Well, because then at that point, to me, everything else did just become like, well, if it doesn't work, I'll get another job.
That's what I said. I was like, yeah, exactly. Like if it doesn't work, I'll get another job. I still tell myself that if it doesn't work, I'll get another job. If this whole music thing doesn't work out, I'm gonna have to go get a job.
Yep. 100%.
That's fine.
Yep.
But hopefully, that job looks different now. You know, like I've carved a space out for myself that I can get a job that I want to do. You know,
Right.
And that is more aligned with all the things I've been doing. But like right now, I'm happy. You know, it's like I'm free to be the person and musician and creative artist that I want to be. And like all of that is, you know, I'm very, very thankful for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something too. Like, since we're kind of talking careers at this point, but which even feels weird to say out loud.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like I don't know, to call like what I'm doing a career. It's like so strange.
Yes, yeah. The question, like, what do you do? I love and hate at the same time because it's always a weird conversation, and I'm always trying to figure out a way to say it succinctly. But it's always like, well, because if I'm just like, I'm a podcaster, it's like it's a weird thing to even say.
But at least they understand the word podcast.
True.
Like I say, I am an ambient musician.
You can just say you're a musician, though.
I know, but then they're like, "What are you playing?" I'm like, "Well, I play with tape loops and I play ambient music and I play." They're like, "What's that? What's that? What are you talking about?" You know, and you're like, "I'm a musician," and they're like, "Are you in a rock band?" You're like, "Kinda,
sort of."
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I understand because I did have that for a long time. Like, what is a podcast? I'm like, well, it's like radio on the internet. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sort of.
Radio on the internet.
Yes.
You have to like think about it. I always think about it through the lens of like how, if I'm talking to my parents or I'm telling my parents how to describe me, like I need to give them the right things. Because if I told them like, just tell people I'm making tape loops and like, what's a tape loop? I'm like, okay, I'm making like movie music.
Yeah.
You know, it's like cinematic. Like, oh, okay. I'm like, it's instrumental. There's no singing. They're like, oh, okay. You know, like those things they can understand. Like finding the right, language.
Yes. Yeah, it's not a struggle that I ever thought I would have. Like, I always because I'm excited about what I do and I do want to talk about it, but I also don't want to be that guy. So it's always like a weird thing where I'm like, how do I not turn this conversation that was a back and forth into something that's entirely about me? Because that's not what I'm trying to do. Yeah. But at the same time, it's a weird thing that takes some explanation. So it's not really a problem. It's just a kind of a conundrum, I guess.
Yeah, it is wild. It's just a weird world of explaining what you do.
We are brought to you today by Sweetwater, specifically the Gear Exchange. You may have heard about this. This is a place where you can go to buy and sell your used gear. Maybe you got a pedal over there that's just kind of collecting dust. Maybe there's something you've been eyeing from the Sweetwater catalog. Well, right now is a great time to turn that unused gear into something you're actually going to use. Even better, if you sell on the Gear Exchange, you can keep 100% of the sale as long as you choose a Sweetwater gift card as your payout method. That is not too shabby because, let's be honest, most of this buying and selling we do is just to fund new gear purchases, and that is a great way to reach a wide variety of customers and keep 100% in your pocket, or rather on your pedal board. So go check out the Sweetwater Gear Exchange and turn that unused gear into something that's actually going to help you write that next huge riff.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Good Hertz. And it's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. In some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblissaudio.com. I think you're gonna like what you find.
Ever wonder what a punch from Elton John feels like?
Or how you'd cope with having turned down the chance to be in Nirvana?
Or what signal Keith Richards gives when he wants you to get the hell out of his hotel room?
Fans of Too Much Effing Perspective don't have to wonder, because they've heard these exact stories and a jillion others on our podcast. I'm Alex Hoffman, former tour manager for Radiohead.
And I'm musician and comedy writer Alan Keller. On the TMEP show, we get guests like Nancy Wilson from Heart, Jeremiah Freites from the Lumineers, and Modern Family's Julie Bowen to tell us things they may have only shared with their therapist, clergy, or a TMZ stringer.
So join us on Too Much Effing Perspective. That's EFFING Perspective. The only podcast you crank up to 11.
But where I was going with that, I kind of got sidetracked from my main thing, my main point with that is, you brought up something where like there's always this one thing keeping you there, and once that's severed, you can kind of go. But there's a picture of what success looks like in Western societies of like big house, fancy car, blah, this and that, blah, 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 balling out of control. And I mean, sure, that'd be cool, but I don't think that really, those things matter that much as far as making you happy.
No.
I think having enough and having a car that doesn't blow up all the time and like having stability is good. But like that requires a certain level of income. I'm not trying to sit here and be like, you don't need any money at all. Just go live in the woods. You'll be happy.
Totally.
It requires some level of income.
Yeah. We live in America. It requires some level of income. You need that.
Yeah. But it's not all about the money.
No.
And I feel like you only ever hear really wealthy people say that, but I think it's true for like, especially in the creative space. Yes. It's really difficult if you can have some level of stability and be able to work on things you want to, which is easier said than done. I'm not trying to make this sound easy. I think that, to me, that's what success
Yes.
actually looks like. And I try to put that out there in all the time because it's a message that can get taken the wrong way, I think. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, your money doesn't matter. Oh,
I
you
know.
must be a
No.
rich kid
Yeah.
or something. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, that's
No.
not what I'm saying. And I understand
know.
why you think that.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're all programmed to feel that way, and like money is the only thing that matters. And like, I think for a long time I thought that too. And like, you know, I made way more as a computer programmer.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I was like living comfortably. And then I'm like, do I really want to choose to be a musician and try to get by? And like, I had to reprogram my brain of like what that looks like and what success looks like and how is that measured? And it's measured by time. It's measured
Yes.
by my time every day that I have to do whatever I want. And like, that is so valuable. You know, I can't put a price tag on that. You know, I even feel like I can't go back to computer programming because I'm like, I've grown out of it. I don't think I could fit back in the cubicle anymore. Like, I've expanded too much, you know?
I have literal nightmares about having to go back to something like that.
Yeah.
It's either high school or it's a regular 9 to 5 type situation. Usually it's like a specific one that I won't mention. But
Right.
but
like
literally
it-
wake up and I think to myself in my dream, I'm like, I guess I don't wake up. I find myself in the dream where I'm back in the same situation I worked so hard to get out of, and I thought everything was going okay. What happened?
Yeah.
What is going on? Why am I here? Like,
Yeah.
what is going like? And it's weird that that's become like not like the most horrifying worst nightmare ever, but it's weird that it's become a reoccurring dream.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm really unemployable.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of wild to think about those things. Like, you know, I don't think you think about like your job as like traumatic, but I think your job, depending on what you do and like maybe the level of abuse you may be experiencing or like unhappiness you feel like, I feel like in those 9 to 5 situations, I've definitely had jobs that felt like more traumatic in my brain where I'm like, I remember hating it so much and like being so unhappy and like having that be a reoccurring nightmare of being in that same old weird job that I used to have like many, many years ago. I'm like, whoa, why is that coming up?
Yeah. Well, it
It's
seems
scary.
pretty common, though,
Yeah.
at least for people I talk to. It seems like we're all sort of harboring that, like, I don't think we're waking up and thinking like, wow, oh no, we're going to lose it all. I don't
Yeah.
think it's like an active thought,
Yeah.
but then there's clearly something in the back of our brain
Yeah.
that's like, hey, come back to us. Come back
Yeah.
to the dark side.
Right, right.
And I'm like, no, please, no.
No.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that like, you know, like I'm talking about all the positives of like being self-employed and being able to do this. Like there are definitely days every day when you also have the negatives of like the crushing anxiety that it all could come crashing down. Like when does the other shoe fall or whatever? And like, when is the dream over? You know, and like that is very real too. You're like, all of this could end at any point.
And I don't think that feeling ever goes away.
No.
I'm not allowed to say who, but I've heard from other people from, let's just say, a band that's been at the top of the world for longer than I've been alive. Some of those members still feel that way.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're like, man, this could all go away. It's like, there's a stadium full of people out there. I don't think it's going away for you, but they still feel that way. I don't think that it's a feeling that ever really, because it almost, I think when you don't come from that world, where most of us don't, we weasel our way in somehow.
Yeah.
It feels like a kind of a fantasy. Because as kids, we're looking at the music world as like, wouldn't that be cool?
Oh, yeah.
Man, wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
Never thinking that it's going to be you.
Totally. I mean, I can look back at like 15-year-old me flipping through Musician's Friend magazine, be like, that pedal's sick. That pedal's so cool. Oh man, what I would do if I had that one. And like to be here now and be like, oh, I have so many fun toys. I have so many of these things that I wanted. And like, I get to do this and play and like have fun and like, oh, this is a dream that can be taken away. This is like, it's going to end like tomorrow. Like it's all going to come crashing down,
Right.
you know?
But for me, and I'm guessing for you too, I handle the stress of having it all be on me and up to the decisions that I make, good or bad, however that shakes out. The stress of that is pretty high. But to me, it was more stressful, and it sounds ridiculous to a lot of people. To my dad, it sounds ridiculous. It was more stressful to me to be told that I had to do something just because I had to do it. I'm like, but that's stupid. That's not the way you should do it. And that stressed me out more for some reason. Just being told, like, no, you need to be here because I said you need to be here. I'm like, but the boat's not there. I'm going to be sitting there waiting for 3 hours. Why can't I be waiting at home and you can call me when it shows up? No, because you need to get here now. Okay.
Yeah, I feel that.
You're not technically the boss, but you're the boss in this situation. So I'll show up and sit there for 3 hours and look at you.
Yeah.
Until the boat shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of stuff drove me crazy. I would get so mad and so frustrated, much more, and I can handle the repercussions if I make a bad decision.
Sure.
But that stuff just not being able to. I guess it comes down to a time thing. Not being able to control my own time because somebody else says so for no real reason drives me insane.
Oh yeah, that's awful. Like, I feel that. Like, especially if you're sitting there like for 3 hours just fuming. You're like, why am I even here? I didn't even need to be here.
I didn't need to.
And now I'm just like sitting here using that time to just be annoyed. You know, like what a. Like,
and the reasoning was, but you'll be here when it gets here. I'm
just like
no, because it takes an hour for it to tie it up.
Layers of frustration just stacking.
Yeah,
you know, and you're like, I'm so annoyed. Like, I can't believe this is how I'm using my time.
Yeah, like I could be hanging out with my wife. I could be doing literally anything else.
Well, it's someone else dictating how you use your time, and you're like, this is not a productive use of my time. I know what I could be doing. And if I was my own boss, I would do it. I would do it all. Yep. I would make all the decisions, good or bad, and be like, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. And you're like, at the end of the day, you're like, I shouldn't have done that thing and that thing.
And that's fine.
But that's on me. Yeah. It's okay.
Yep.
I wasted my own time and I made the call. That's okay. I'll yell at myself later and I'll learn. And it's fine.
And then I try to remember that feeling. And then when it is me having to make that decision for somebody else, I try to minimize that to the best of my abilities. Like, I don't want you. Also, I don't want to pay you to show up and sit here for 3 hours and not do anything. No, I want you to be here when you need to be here for no more than that. Like, that's all I want. But yeah, it was just a massive organization. So, you know, things get diluted. And I'm sure if the powers that be could see that, they'd be like, no, why we paid him 3 hours to do what?
Yeah.
Just to sit here? No. Yeah. And I was wired so much differently than everybody. I remember my supervisor being like, oh yeah, it looks like you got a boat this weekend. Well, that's cool. I'm like, yeah, you got to do it, whatever. And he's like, well, it was a holiday. He's like, well, you're getting paid double time for it. I'm like, I just looked at him straight. I was like, I'd pay you to not come in. He was like, what? I was like, I really don't want to come in, but I have to.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's a different attitude. I'm like, I'll still be here.
Yeah.
I'll still do a good job.
Sure.
But I think that was his first indication. Like, oh, this guy's not quite.
This thing is not like everyone else, just like motivated by the money. You're like, I'd rather not.
No.
Like the double time doesn't, I don't care. I don't want to do it.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which sounds terrible in some, because then, 10 years prior to that, I'd be like, I'll take all the hours because I was completely destitute.
Yeah.
But
I mean, like priorities change, like values shift, like, what you think matters changes from being a young person to like as you get older,
It's true.
Like, what you really value and what matters to you, it's going to change. And like it's like to know yourself is to like really value that too, to be like, okay, this is actually what's really important to me. And I have to like lean into those values that I actually hold dear, that I actually care about. Because otherwise it's like setting yourself up to be miserable.
Yeah.
Setting yourself up to be unhappy. You're like, I don't, like the way I want to be and what I'm doing doesn't align.
That's very true.
No.
There's another interesting thing when you said that it changes. It also changes based upon your circumstance. Because I was just thinking, we were talking about the dread of ever having to go back. I'm like, if this all got yanked out and I did have to go back, I think going back to way earlier in the conversation, not knowing if I could do that again, like, oh yeah, I can, because now I even know what it's like. So I think I would grind that much harder to try to get back to this point.
Yeah, right.
So actually, I think I do still have that dog in me a little bit.
Well, because once you get a taste of that, you're like, oh, I want that.
I'm gonna get that back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. As long as I had my health and and my sanity, like I'd be like, yeah, I can. I'm getting back there. I'm going back there somehow. Eventually, it might take 10 years, but I'm getting back there.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, man, we
have strayed from guitars and pedals.
Welcome to the show, baby.
Okay.
That's how it goes.
Okay, great.
It's all good.
I love it.
Yeah, that's how it goes. But we'll get back a little bit on track here, sort of big. But we have reached the hour mark. And I got a couple classic questions I like to wrap the episodes up on. But before I do, I like to give the guests a chance to take the stage. You're talking to a few thousand people right now, and you can plug anything you want to plug. You can shout out, your great aunt. You can do whatever you want to do right now.
Let's see. The most, I just got back from tours, so I don't have any tours planned. I'm playing a festival in Toronto at the end of May called Prepare the Ground. Okay. That'll be my first time playing in Toronto, so I'm excited about that. Like I said, I just got back from tours, so I have a bunch of leftover merch that's on my Bandcamp. So if you want a shirt or some stickers or whatever, come check that out, as well as the music. I guess I can plug the music. What else? What do I have to plug? I don't know. I think that's like the most immediate stuff. If you need a soundtrack or a remix,
there you go.
Hit me up. Or you need even like studio recording work. Like I've lent tape sounds and guitar sounds and stuff to people. So I'll play on a record, whatever. So I don't know. I feel like that's a pretty good plug.
All right, cool. And where's the best place for people to find that? Is it your website?
Probably mostly just like Bandcamp or Instagram.
Okay.
Like between the two of them. Like,
if you Google Amulets music, I'm here to tell you, lots of stuff pops up.
Yeah. Been doing it a while now, so yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see the Google search like beat stuff, and I'm like, wow, it feels like I've been doing this a while and have like things to show. Yeah, it's great.
Oh, you have been.
Yeah. Yep. Like wow, the algorithm.
Yep. And give him a follow on Instagram. He's one of my favorite instrumental follows there, because not only is the music really cool, the tape loops and everything are very, very hypnotic to me.
Yeah.
So go follow him over there for that stuff too, because the visual element is also extremely cool. So make sure you check that stuff out. All right, everybody, go do it. Go take a pause.
Go do it.
Go do it now. I'm going to give you a couple seconds.
Do it now.
Okay, thank you. All right, here we go. Classic questions. First one.
Okay.
What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Favorite Boss? Ooh. I feel like, right now, I'm actually, the one Boss pedal I'm using the most right now is the new slicer.
Oh, man.
The new mini slicer I have in my setup. And it's been really fun to like have some of those like rhythmic elements and stuff. But favorite, maybe the classic DD3.
The DD3?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
DD2, DD3.
Yeah.
I talk about this all the time. I'm convinced that the early DD3s are the same as the DD2.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that for a fact, but I've opened them both up and looked at them. I'm pretty sure they're the same.
Yeah. I think I have a DD3 or DD5. Five? Is there a
great.
5?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I have the 5 on my board right now. And I had the 3 for a long time to do like the like stuttery hold thing.
Yeah.
That thing was fun.
I love that.
Yeah. Anyway.
I love the DD3. It's such a great, crisp, love it.
I'll go with that.
Yep. All right, final question. Here we go. This might get specific since we both live in the same area.
Yeah.
What's your favorite kind of pizza?
Favorite kind of pizza?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I grew up in upstate New York.
Okay.
And so I feel like, I don't know, New York style pizza is always like thin, big,
love it.
Floppy slice. Although, I've come around to definitely liking, more like deeper crust, like Detroit style pizza. I love. You know, a good grandma pie. You know, like stuff like that. But even like Chicago deep dish. You know,
Once in a while.
Once in a while. I know it's not like pizza. Like they are. You know, it gets into a deeper argument.
I consider it a pizza cousin. That's what I consider it.
Yeah,
myself.
sure.
Yeah.
It's pizza adjacent, right?
It's delicious.
Yeah, it's delicious.
It's not what I crave when I'm craving pizza.
No, I just want like a New York style slice. Like here, I'll go to Baby Doll. That's like
Baby Doll's great.
One of my faves.
Yeah, I love Baby Doll. Scotty's Pizza Parlor is
Love
great.
Scotty's. Oh yeah, I forgot about Scotty's.
Yes.
Scotty's is great.
Scott's been on the podcast.
Oh really?
Sitting right where you're sitting.
Oh.
Yeah, it was great.
Scotty's is so good.
Oh, I love Scotty's. Scotty's is great. Did you ever get in on? And this is like a weird hyper nerd thing. Did you ever get in on Jerry's Pizza?
Yes.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay, you're the only one I know other than me that
Eric
knows.
and I would go to Jerry's like pop up at Bear Paw. Or
Bear
whatever.
Paw, yeah.
And like we would go there all the time, and like that, like Chicago Tavern thin crust, crackery thin crust. Oh, so good.
Oh, but it's
so
like
good.
The flavor, the texture, everything.
He's like really meticulous about that stuff too. Like that, you can see that dude putting in time.
You know
into
how
those
he started,
pizzas.
right?
No.
Oh, you don't, dude.
How did he start?
He started baking those things in his kitchen during the pandemic.
Oh.
And literally like through Instagram.
Oh wait, no, I feel like I did remember this. Yes, okay.
I've told the story a bunch for the listeners, but like for anybody, I'll try to condense it. He basically like had a waiting list like Analog Man does for the King of Tone.
Yeah.
And he got on that list. I got on it right before he started going to the Bear Paw. I got on the list, and so I was one of the first Bear Paw pizzas. But yeah, it was hard to get.
Yeah.
You had to be on it.
I know.
Yeah.
Because you had like a reservation, and like I remember just going to Bear Paw and like having to buy the pizza canned, and like I'm like, what is this wild system? I had to like get in line to buy a pizza, but it was worth it. It was so good.
So good.
I've definitely like hit him up on Instagram, like, when are you opening Jerry's Tavern? When is it gonna happen?
I'm so ready.
When are we gonna see it?
It's gonna be a line around the block when it happens.
On, Jerry.
He's not gonna be able to keep up for a while. I know that much.
I'm like, Jerry, is it money? We can find you sponsors.
We can figure this out.
Yeah. What is this, Jerry? Open up,
Jerry. Please, Jerry.
And he still like posts the pizzas that he's making at his house. He's like, oh, I'm just experimenting with this one. I'm like, that looks so good, man. Stop teasing us. Open the Jerry's Tavern.
Like, Jerry, I'll pay more for the pizza if I have to. That's how addicted I am to it. It's so good.
Yeah. Like, Jerry, do everyone a favor.
Jerry, please. Are you listening to this? Jerry.
We
need it. Portland needs you, Jerry.
Jerry, come on, man.
Come on. I don't think we could end this podcast on a better note than begging Jerry.
Begging Jerry to make his pizza. Anyway, enough about guitars.
Enough about guitars. Those things are weird anyway. Dude, thank you so much for hanging out. So we take a little pause and we'll come back for some Patreon. Does that work for you?
Sounds great.
All right. All right, everybody. For Randall, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, folks, there you have it. And of course, as always, there's even more on Patreon. We get into some weird stuff. We get into some fun stuff. We have an extended version of this chat. And if you would like to get that, you can go to patreon.com/tonemob. And for $5 a month, you'll not only get those bonus episodes, you'll also get the ad-free feed as well. Thank you so much to Randall for coming on. I hope to talk to him more in the future. He is super cool, and I really enjoyed our conversations. And again, make sure you check out his music. The link to his website will be in the show notes, so make sure you go there, check it out, and enjoy it, because it is pretty killer. All right, folks. Hope you had a good Christmas. I'll be talking to you all. Actually, I think this might be the last episode of the year. Trippy. Unless I get a wild hair and release a bonus episode, which might happen. You never know. I can get crazy like that sometimes. But if I don't talk to you before then, I will see you in the new year. Thank you for all the support. I really appreciate you. And be good to each other. All right, folks. Bye-bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.
Do you like to laugh, geek out on music, and learn all about that band or artist who had that one song back in the day, but then seemed to fall off the face of the earth? If so, you need to subscribe to One Hit Thunder. Together with an array of interesting and hilarious guests, we do a weekly dive into one-hit wonders like Eiffel 65's Blue, Krayshawn's Gucci Gucci, EMF's Unbelievable, Delamitri's Roll to Me, Los Del Rio's Macarena, Musical Youth's Pass the Dutchie, and even Patrick Swayze's She's Like the Wind. So are you subscribed to One Hit Thunder or what? As Desiree would say, you gotta be. And as K7 would encourage, you gotta come, baby, come and join in on the fun of the One Hit Thunder podcast.
Come, baby, come, baby, baby, come, come. Come, baby, come, baby, baby, come.
Hey, this is Dewey Halpus, host of Peer Pleasure on the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. Join me each week as I explore another long-form conversation with one of your favorite musicians, actors, comedians, or creatives. From Chino Moreno of the Deftones, John Gorley of Portugal the Man, to Fat Mike from NoFX and Ian MacKaye from Fugazi and Minor Threat, we go all over the map. From Fall Out Boy to Slayer, Peer Pleasure has it all. Check us out now on Sound Talent Media.